Hope and Patience with Amelia Rope, a podcast about business, well-being and chocolate.
Hello and welcome to Hope and Patience. It's me, Amelia Rope, ex-chocolate creator, now podcast creator and your host. If you're new to Hope and Patience, it's great to have you here. We're going to be exploring, delving into the stories of founders and dipping into pearls of wisdom from well-being experts. It's about discovery. The guests will be inspirational and the precious insights shared guaranteed to be absolute gems. So, as a founder, I struggled with mental health at times. I feel in a way it's sort of mental fitness. It should be a workout. And I think I hope we're going to talk quite a lot about it on the podcast. That when you're a founder, the pressure is huge. There is a danger to internalise the stress, in case you don't want to share it with investors, maybe you don't have a business partner, or maybe you don't want to burden your own partner. My guest is very much connected to mental fitness, mental health. He's a real example of resilience. He's the founder of Head Talks, which is a non-profit digital mental health and wellbeing platform. So a huge hello to Oliver Chittenden.
Hello.
Welcome to Hope and Patience.
Thank you very much.
So, Oliver, Head Talks is the most incredible, you wouldn't call it a business, social enterprise support?
Yeah, it's a community interest company. It's not a charity because I don't want to go down that sort of more bureaucratic route, and it's given us more flexibility. But yeah, it is non-profit, and it's a free resource for everyone really to get a sort of support and ideas of how to boost their mental health and well-being.
And your sort of commercial aspect is as a specialist agent of the London Speakers Bureau, which must be an extremely full-on demanding role. And then you've extended onto that to build headtalks.com. What was the trigger? What was the catalyst that made you feel compelled to set Head Talks up?
So, yeah, I've worked as a speaker agent for 20 years, and it was the first job I got out of college. I just answered a newspaper ad, actually. It's not something you train to be a speaker agent, and I've felt very fortunate to work with lots of diverse people, from politicians to business leaders to sports people to all sorts, and it's been great, and I've always enjoyed it, and I still enjoy it. But through my career, I had one breakdown when I was 27. I was working in Brussels at the time, and I sort of had no concept of what mental health was, or what I had no language for that. I was young. I was 27, and I was fearless. I was ready to conquer the world, and I just got hit by these waves of anxiety, and I just didn't know what it was. And anyway, that led to a sort of spiraling of drugs and alcohol, and I call it my year on the run, when I basically was running away from the problem, and actually ended up in Australia, being picked off a pavement and flown back to a treatment centre in London. And that was my first kind of brush with mental health, which is comparatively late for most people. Often it springs up in adolescence. But I thought I've got to get out of London, so I went to live in the middle of nowhere at the bottom of the Alps, tiny little village. And I had a really great time there. My best friends were 80-year-olds, 90-year-olds. I went days, weeks without speaking to anyone. And I sort of had quite a sort of monastic lifestyle. And it was a great period of my life. And I was able to keep working through that, and I wrote some books, and it was a really, really special time. And then I got married and had children. Everything changed, for the better, but obviously it's different things going on. And then I was in London, and in fact, no, I was in France at the time, I remember. And it got me again. So I had 10 years kind of clear almost. And then bang, I was back in, literally like a hammer blow. And I was like, fuck, not now, not while I've got a little kid who's, 1 year old barely, a wife who doesn't speak French. We're in the middle of fucking nowhere. And, this is not what I need, and I'm talking like panic attacks, just holding on for dear life at the edge of a cliff. And that led to another gory story, which I won't go into huge detail about, but it ended up I was in a hospital and all my organs were shutting down from kind of, I think, the trauma of holding on for so long, because I think a lot of mental health, is held in your body, even though you may think you're not stressed. Actually the constant stimulation and stress, it holds itself in your body. And that's what I was told, was all my organs were just kind of closing down, and I was in a really bad way in hospital. And
do you remember any of that?
I remember being on a hospital bed, just thinking, this is it. I was actually in America at the time, and there was no one around me I knew, and I was trying to get better, and then I was actually getting worse. So it was like just a terrible time of my life. And I mean, I could hardly actually speak. I was really broken. Properly broken. But I just remember thinking at the time that I need to do something in this space, in mental health space. And I had TED Talks, was something that I'd sort of spent a lot of time using, and obviously it's very linked to my work as a speaker agent. And I kind of had this vision of TED Talks of the mind, TED Talks of well-being. And I had no business plan. I had nothing. I just completely freestyled it. And I got my family back to England, settled things down, and then got going with Head Talks.
And that was back in 2016? Or when you launched 2016?
Yeah, it was about 2.5-3 years ago. Yeah.
So there must have been quite a lot of preparation with that. What I've found fascinating is that, looking at Head Talks, is the way that you have started and managed to destigmatize mental health within the sort of higher profile people. It's so refreshing to see the CEO of Unilever, Paul Polman, talking about mental health and acknowledging the issues. And Bruce Daisley, I think, from Twitter, Alistair Campbell, Scarlett Curtis, who I know from reading the Times. But it's how have you managed to get people to openly talk about it and not feel vulnerable, and they trust that you've created a very safe space, which is not an easy thing to do.
I think I was lucky also because at the time the royals were really kind of, doing their work with the stigma thing, and only kind of a member of the royal family could sort of smash through stigma and have that effect, like Princess Diana in the mines. And I think that was happening at the same time. So it was slowly being broken down. But basically, I've always been kind of me. Like, I've always been quite open, and for me, it was just about being real and, making it clear that I was someone who'd had my own troubles, and I just wanted to talk to them. I didn't structure my interviews. I didn't prepare. I just kind of knew I wanted to just sort of have a real chat. There's so few real conversations happening out there, and I think those seem to be the things that move and inspire and make people cry and laugh, and so much of what we see in media is I don't know, heavily curated or fake, or it just sort of doesn't feel real. And that was my main thing. And I'd often interview people who actually weren't there for having a lived experience of mental health, but during the interview it'd be like, oh, they were homeless at one stage, and yeah, they had massive grief issues, or haven't slept for like 10 years, and it's like bang, wow. So I don't know, it was just creating a sort of, making it safe and just saying, just no pressure, let's just have a chat.
Did you realise that the people who ended up being ambassadors and talking to you actually had mental health issues? I mean, did someone say to you, oh, you should speak to them because I understand that they've had problems, or how did it all sort of happen? Yeah,
I kind of followed my nose with it. What I wanted was a platform that had a lot of variety. And it wasn't just about lived experience, although I think lived experience is something that people really relate to a lot. And in fact, I think, that peer-to-peer support in a crisis is really valuable, as is the medical holistic, whatever, family. But often, if there's a crisis in a family or something, I think there's real scope to have more peer-to-peer support, because it's just having someone who gets it, who's kind of experienced that pain. It's really hard to describe, but it is like, having a car crash and going through the windscreen and breaking 2 legs and not being able to move. It's like, in that case, an ambulance would arrive within 20 seconds. But, in the mental health world, that can take 6 months to arrive, but the pain is equivalent to that. So I wanted a real variety. That the business leaders obviously is important, because, any change that's going to happen in the corporate space really comes from the top down. So you see Lloyds Bank, for example, the CEO there, Antonio Hortas.
That's it, yeah.
And, he had spent 2 weeks in the Priory just sleeping not so long ago. And as a result, he's led this campaign within Lloyds, which has been really, really healthy, And there are other businesses which have had leaders who've come out and said, this is really important. We need to invest in this in the short term, and the results will come, because happy workforce equals results. It's kind of common sense, and it's coming through. So that's the corporate space, and then I wanted just ordinary people, and social media influencers as well, because I want Head Talks to be about the next generation. I want young people to really benefit from our journey. And then it was to mix it up with all the things that we can do to basically feel better about ourselves, to have better experiences, happier memories, be more productive. And that's where I think the education is. It's saying to people, this is a tricky ground to navigate. There's no one size fits all. Okay, if we go down the NHS route, we know it's pills and therapy. Both are, have their benefits, no question. But there's so much more out there as well. And I think when we look at prevention of these things happening, especially in teenagers, there are loads of things like, cold water swimming. Meditation and cold water swimming I'd put up there as the biggest game changers actually in the mental health space. But there's, it could be singing in the choir, it could be running, it could be going into nature. There's a vast amount of things that we can do, or at least try, and see what sticks. And I didn't want to impose that on people. I just wanted people to be able to navigate around, see what resonated with them, and think, I'll give that a go.
Do you think, moving back onto corporates and the business side, do you think that there's more mental health problems that are stirring that have been suppressed with the old-fashioned style corporates, so the sort of city institutions?
Yeah, stigma is most prevalent in corporates now. No question about that. People are worried about speaking up, about their salaries, about, supporting their families and things like that. And at the moment, it is mostly being done off the side of a desk. It's like, okay, we'll get a mental health speaker in, or we'll do that little campaign around Mental Health Day, and it's like, tick, let's move on to the next thing. Some companies are taking it more seriously, but it's definitely a big issue, and it's a growing issue. And I think, I think it's just going to grow. I think that the common sense of investing in your people's happiness is going to lead to happier teams, hence happier, better results. So, there's a long way to go in that space, but it's starting.
And do you find with founders that there is a common thread as to why they might be compromised with their mental health? Is it financial? Is it the responsibility of looking after the team? Is it because there's something wrong in the business? And is that, as I was sort of saying in the intro, the internalisation of this thing where you don't really actively talk about it?
Yeah, I think being a founder, I was only ever a founder of Head Talks, but I think the most exhausting thing that I find is that you're the one doing all the pushing. If you're not pushing, mm-hmm. no one else is going to be, and that is really, really exhausting. And that combined with sort of managing the other parts of a startup, is extremely challenging. And I mean, I felt it. I collapsed about a year and a half in, and there's no question it's challenging. People in the corporate space, I think they have challenges as well, and I don't. I think everyone's busy. Let's face it, we're all fucking busy.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean?
We're all stretched.
I mean, it's just fucking
utmost.
nuts.
Yeah, it is.
It's like how. When are we going to learn, to uphold these lives is exhausting us.
I don't have notifications on my phone now. That helped me so much, because I used to get all these emails flashing up, and it was usually a crisis of some order hadn't gone out, or, something hadn't been made on time. And I found that as soon as I took control of the situation, it really helped.
Yeah, I know. I've sort of taken a bit of a spiritual route with it all now. And, I actually think some of the simplifying things in life now, I actually think, going backwards is almost a good way to go, and slowing down. I mean, it's just so exhausting trying to keep up. And I worry about the next generation and kids, and that. And I just think we've in the last 50 years, human behaviour and decisions has been really poor, and our happiness as a species has really deteriorated, and we've also endangered our existence through destroying our planet, and we're leaving the next generation with this mess to clear up, which actually I'm quite positive that they're onto it, because it's just being drilled in them, but they're going to need the support to do that. And I think I don't think technology is going to stop evolving and innovating, but I think there are going to be more routes to sort of simpler ways of life.
And people quite simply saying enough. I mean, I noticed that on the sort of social media side, is that people are becoming much more disciplined on it. So on to a bit behind your sort of mindset, because I'm always fascinated by how people think. Would you say that you are an optimist by nature or a pessimist?
So I'm an optimist. I think maybe as I've got older, I've become more pessimistic. But I was always very ambitious and always wanting to do new things and excited about, what lied ahead. So no, generally, I'm an optimist.
Actually, that makes me think of a very important question I should have asked before we moved on to mindset, so we just have to rewind a bit, is that what are your ambitions for Head Talks and, the funding, the growth of it? Where do you see it going?
Yeah, it's really challenging. I mean, we're at a real crossroads now with Head Talks, and I actually really want to hand it over and put it in the right hands to take it to that next level, because I've done so much pushing that I would much rather some more capable and creative people were now taking it forwards, and I would just sit back and do the things that I think I'm good at, that play to my strengths. But I like the idea of Head Talks. I mean, we're going to have to become more commercially minded.
Yep.
That's for sure. And, we're going to have to start creating some digital revenue, which we're starting through Masterclasses online.
Yes, I've taken some, or taken them, watched them. Brilliant. For £3.50, you watch a superb video. You harvest a whole load of information. I thought it was such a good idea. That's one of your masterclasses. Yeah. No. So, I mean, that's all been learning and just starting to putting it out there. And I like the idea of some of our trainers and therapists, or people who are on the front line of this conversation of change and purpose, of sort of narrating more kind of well-being packages. So turning the kind of, if you get inspired by a Head Talk, you can take that learning and take action and invest a little bit in yourself and have a sort of narrated well-being package. So it becomes a commercial vehicle that ultimately will help it grow and give more back.
Yeah, exactly.
It's so exciting. I met you, just for the listeners. I went to one of Oliver's talks, Head Talks. It was the most amazing talk. And basically how I met Oliver was at one of these events, and we had a quick chat about Buddhism, which to me, certainly when I was in my 20s and struggling with life and understanding it, was a real support. And I became so sort of entranced by it that I went to see the Dalai Lama in Wembley many years ago.
Wow.
that's how I connect in with Oliver. Back to the point, would you say that when you make your decisions, Oliver, do you feel that you try and get into a certain mindset to make the most effective decisions?
No, not really. I tend to just dive in and hope for the best. I mean, I am a big meditator, so I do try and pace myself as best I can. And so, for example, like meetings and things like this, I would try and limit them in the day. I find I lose energy and concentration in the afternoons. So I actually gave up having a diary, believe it or not. People laugh when I say this, but it was driving me so crazy. It's like I had an old-fashioned one and I was, scribbling things in and out. And it was just stressing me out. And I just thought, fuck it, I'm going to get rid of it. And people are like, how are you going to organise your life? And I was like, I'm not sure yet. But actually what's happened is I just have a wall diary at home, which is the family diary as well. And I'm very picky now. At the start of Head Talks, I would go to every meeting, because I was pushing. But now I say yes to quite, not so many things. And the things I do say yes to, I hope, that they're going to be productive and they're going to be worthwhile type thing. So but I'm selective and I do much less.
Do you have a photographic memory then so that you could remember your diary in your mind?
No, and I often get things wrong.
Mind you, it's quite good to get out of things, dodge stuff, isn't it? You can say, I haven't got my diary on me. I only look at my diary in the evenings.
I've made a few mistakes. I really have, but it's worth those mistakes to
so
not
it's sort
have
of
the stress.
liberalisation, isn't it?
Freedom.
So would you say you're an introvert, extrovert, ambivert?
God, yeah. It depends on the day. I can be really introverted and sit there saying nothing at a party or whatever. But at the same time, if I'm on form, I can let go as well. It really depends. I just don't know, how I'm going to be feeling. But either way, I'm comfortable with either.
So now we are going to head off into our chocolate break, which is a very exciting time. And you'll hear the rustle of a pack. So Oliver has just declared before he came in the booth that he wanted to put in a request for a treacle tart. But because I said on the email, let me know your favourite chocolate or sweet, he didn't feel he could. So we're lucky. We've maintained our chocolate fix. And how we're going to eat these and talk to you guys, I have absolutely no idea, because Oliver's chocolate treat today is a Cadbury's chocolate eclair.
I've just realised, because I don't eat sweets really, and I've got a bad feeling these are quite chewy.
Yeah, which is why we're going to be gobstops.
I have this terrible problem with my jaw. I'm a clencher as opposed to a grinder.
Yeah.
And I've learned all about this through extensive pain and my mouth genuinely gets tired towards the afternoon, and I actually find it hard to talk.
Get eating.
I don't know if I should eat this.
Well, I've got mine in my mouth, but I was trying to improve my voice for podcasts, and I watched this video.
Maybe I'll let it melt in my mouth and I won't chew. See how that goes.
I watched this video by a voice coach on YouTube, and part of the exercises to improve your voice was to chew as if you've got a toffee in your mouth.
Wow.
I don't think she factored in the equation that you shouldn't have your toffee in the mouth when you're trying to do an
Can I just give a tip?
Yeah.
If you are a grinder or a clencher...
we are talking mouths, by the way.
Yeah, we're talking mouths, sorry. It's really important, if you're a grinder, to get a hard splint gum shield.
That's what I've got.
But if you're a clencher, a soft one, which cushions the blow. And I had terrible times because the dentist told me one way and then someone else told me another way. And if I can avoid the pain I went through for anyone out there, then I'll just take that bit of advice.
They're a really good investment, I have to say, that my mouth guard is superb, although it's getting ground down. But apparently my jaw was aging to a sort of 6-year-old. I mean, it was agony. I got earache and stuff.
Oh, it's a nightmare. It's horrible. Absolutely.
But for your one, clenching, what about putting your tongue at the roof of your mouth?
Yeah,
Does that help?
I've tried. Listen, I've done Botox. I've done
He knows, this man.
Acupuncture, I've had scans. Trust me, I've been through the hoops on this one.
He's a pro. Okay, so briefly on the chocolate eclairs while we finish our ones off. They are apparently, or were apparently, created by taverners in the 30s. And then they were adapted by our dear Cadbury's, although sadly not Cadbury's anymore, dairy milk version in 1965. And there are variations like the orange twist and hazelnut and coffee. And they're called chocolaires in India. So that's a little facts. Okay, onwards. Oliver, what does the words failure and success mean to you? Oliver's still chomping on his toffee.
I guess failure is just sort of giving up the fight. And I feel like that quite a lot of the time. I just think this is just too hard, like this life thing is like too much for me. But I think the success comes hand in hand with that because I have children. So as my Buddhist teacher says to me, you can be what's called a slipstream meditator. You don't have to be in the river and completely lead a monastic life in a monastery. You can be a householder. You can enter in on the slipstream and deal with your responsibilities. So keeping a balance on that. Yeah, success for me is just being able to bring up my children and equip them as best I can and keep that whole show on the road,
So on to the well-being aspect. I think it's very easy to neglect when one's really busy to look after oneself because you're constantly looking after other people. And actually, I found a quote I just want to read before we dip into the well-being side of Oliver's existence. So, health is the greatest gift, contentment the greatest wealth, faithfulness the best relationship. And that is by Buddha. So, Oliver, do you have a daily ritual of taking care of yourself at all?
I'll meditate every day.
And how long do you meditate for?
About 30, 45 minutes in one stint.
It's quite long.
And I don't have a routine like when that happens in the day. I'd like to do it in the morning, but I have to deal with the children and school runs and things like that. So often I'll go into a park if the weather's okay. Or I've actually got this like meditation centre I've found near where I work. And I've got everyone now going to it. And they do a sort of break between 1:15 and I've just got to the chocolate part of my and it's getting stickier. So yeah, that for me is a regular. I swim in the mornings, and what I do is I swim, and then I go to the sauna, and then I go and collapse for about 45 minutes. So I actually often don't start my day till about 10:30.
Wow. And then, but does your day finish later as you start at 10:30?
No. I tend to...
You're a smart worker then.
Well, probably not. I tend to nod off at like 4 because I've just run out of steam, run out of energy. I was always someone at school who did a lot in a short amount of time. So I would kind of learn things off by heart or whatever and then get it done. So I have periods where my attention and my efficiency is like peaking, and I just cane it then and get it done, and then I nod off.
Do you find that that is at a certain time of day? I certainly find that in the morning I am right on it. So at 6 in the morning, 6:30, my brain is ready to write, to absorb information. Come the afternoon, and actually, listeners, we are doing this in the afternoon, my brain is definitely more spongy.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I organise a lot of stuff in the morning when I know I have to be on form. There's no question about it. But I try and stay away from my phone till about 10:30 in the morning. I quite like arriving into the office, without having looked at anything. And then I can sit down, I can prepare myself, and then, look at my emails. So, yeah, those are some of the things I do. I have
cold bathing. What
I have
about the cold bathing?
I do the sauna, and then I have a cold shower, and then I collapse on the deck chair and sort of half meditate, half sleep. So that's another thing. Yeah, I always have a cold shower. Other things, I just try and eat sensibly. A lot of it is common sense, we're in bed really early, we're so horrifically antisocial. and I'm often in bed by 9:30.
Do you get woken up, stirred by your
Yeah,
little,
yeah,
your
yeah.
little
That happens.
children?
Yeah, definitely. I get into nature. I'm walking a lot. I do a lot of walks. I go on trails. I did a pilgrim trail last year up in Scotland, and I'm currently doing the one from Winchester to Canterbury, which is called the Pilgrim's Way. So if it's a nice day, I might wake up and I might think, fuck it, I'm not going to work today. And I get on the train, I go and pick up where I left off the trail, and I'll walk for 12, 15 miles and then maybe stay the night and do another 15 miles if it's nice weather. So walking for me is really important.
I have to just put in a woman's question here. What about your lovely wife?
My wife is just happy. She is so well looked after. Trust me. I don't even want to open.
She
that
does
box
want
of
to be
chocolates.
leaping on the train and heading down the Pilgrim's Way with you.
No. I don't think so. No, listen. I have a good balance with all of that, and I'm unashamedly, people say to me like, that's, how do you justify that? Sometimes I'll do the school run and I'll go back to bed afterwards because it's been so traumatizing and stressful getting them dressed and getting them to school. And I'm like, I need to sleep for another 3 hours, And the thing is that if I don't do these things, you see, you have to realize that I have to do these things, otherwise I break down.
Yeah. So it's important. It's your maintenance, really,
Yeah, it
to
really
prevent
is.
anything happening in the future.
Totally. And if I break down, I can't be there for my family, So it's of no use to anyone. And it's the same with me. I go on, long silent retreats where you hand in your phone, you don't talk for 10 days, and my wife does find that really hard. But she's also seen the results of it. And for me, that's it's survival.
Yeah, it's an investment. Otherwise, exactly, it is how you exist.
It's survival.
And I don't know what our listeners think, but I think it's really, really inspirational the way that you've done that, and the way what you've been through has ripped you inside to your absolute rawest state, I would imagine, and you've rebuilt yourself up and created something that is going to be a phenomenal legacy, I think, for a long, long time. And that is, brilliant, Oliver.
It's really nice to hear that. And it's something that I think when you're a founder, often you're so tangled up with stuff and life gets in the way. And it's the same in life generally. You don't pause to breathe in good things that happen, and comments like that or little achievements, we kind of need to stop and really let that sink in. And, because I don't feel those things enough, it's like things get in the way. And it's just really nice to be reminded of that. Thank you.
I think it helps fuel our tanks, and I think it means so much when people do make the effort. They shouldn't have to make the effort, but when they do make the effort, I remember getting emails saying, I ate one of your bars of chocolate and felt as if I'd gone to heaven. And I just thought, wow, at least one person appreciates it, because you become sort of removed when you're running something. You're constantly thinking about the next thing. You're constantly thinking about keeping the momentum going and building your vision, I think. And there is that frustrating side of when you're running your own gig that you just don't stop and you don't just think, wow, look what I've done.
That's it.
Okay, so that takes me to another question that we're sort of skipping around. I'm sorry, listeners, this time. The inner critic within you, can it be quite harsh? Is it something that you've got totally under control and you're in a balance with?
Listen, inner critic reminds me of kind of therapy, and I go easy on myself now. I really do. And I don't beat myself up. No, I don't, because it wouldn't be good for me. And I try my best. And I think I'm a good person. And it's actually a bit of a vanity to judge yourself almost. Let's go with no self. Just let go of that and just be. Amen.
Amen. Okay, so do you have a favourite hideaway where you go to that you're happy to share?
I guess in London it's a sauna. Being in a sauna feels pretty safe. I quite like being in aeroplanes.
Why aeroplanes?
Just because no one can touch you, really,
Apart from your next door neighbour.
Yeah, but I just feel, I quite like aeroplanes. I can just sit back. The pilot's in charge.
Yeah.
I don't get fear of that at all. I'd much rather someone else is in charge of my life than me. I quite like it there. And then I used to obviously have my my escape in France, which was a wonderful place. And now I guess it's Wales, on my retreats. That's my real time to myself.
Do you have a book that you would like to recommend to our listeners that they should take a dip into?
I read a lot. I think reading for the mind is what exercise is for the body. The Tibetan Book of Dying and Living is good. It's long. What else? I quite like travel writing. So I like hearing about people's journeys. What have I read recently?
You should read Johnny Bilby's. He's come on the show. He's written a trilogy, which was his experience of when he lost his fiancée on a trip and how he sort of dealt with grief through travel.
Yeah, that sounds interesting. Yeah, I like reading things like that.
So would it be possible, because the podcast is called Hope and Patience, after my two wonderful grandmothers, would you be able to give an example, Oliver, of when you've had to have dollop loads of hope and a bucket load of patience?
So patience, I think, is like being patient with the whole baby coming into your life and that whole kind of massive disruption, and just being patient with the change that takes. I mean, and actually the same with marriage, because both those things.
I haven't done either yet.
Oh, okay, don't worry. Well, but both those things. I mean, I'm still getting used to marriage and being a father, and I'm 10 years married, and my eldest is 8. I'm still getting used to that, and it is a huge change. And I think so that's definitely my patience thing. And then hope, I think, is when the darkness comes in and tries to terrorize me. It's I need to have bucket loads of hope, but when that's around.
So is there anything that you'd like to share with the listeners? Is there a new masterclass or maybe something that Head Talks is doing? The website, everybody, is headtalks.com. I
mean, listen, I don't like to sort of, self-advertise, but there is changes happening on Head Talks. It's I think our newsletter is really good. It's
superb. It is really good. I've signed up. And
it's free and it's every Sunday. And I think that's a really good resource as a starting point.
And you get little video snippets on it. I watched a snippet.
Yeah, you get little snippets. So there's podcasts, there's videos, there's things like that. But yeah, I think keep an eye on it because I think it will turn into something, hopefully big and beautiful. And what was the other thing? Oh, I think magic mushrooms.
Ah.
So I think this is going to be a really interesting space that's opening up. And something I'm really interested in is the healing benefits of MDMA and ecstasy and magic mushrooms, kind of LSD. And I think this is an area that's opening up in mental health. And I think it's really fascinating because you've got to realize that we haven't come out with they haven't come out with a new pill, for a long time now. I mean, there's the Prozac was the old one and all the antidepressants around it, but actually a new drug, there hasn't been one for a long time. And I think you see what the effects of meditation are having, these kind of old techniques. And I think these things grounded in history and in the earth, I think there's more and more, cannabis, things like this. So I think, keep an eye out on all of that.
Thank you, Oliver, so much for coming along today. It's been a real treat. I have really enjoyed it, and I know that our listeners will have got a lot out of it. So thank you very much.
My pleasure.
So we've had a fantastic response to my little soliloquies at the end of the podcast, and which is really encouraging. I just wanted to read one out, which was on a response to Rowan and talking about how he viewed success. And it's a comment by Patricia Mitchell, who is a mixed media sculptor. Her Instagram is Patricia Mitchell Design. And this is what she said and her views of success too. Rowan said it's not a bulging wallet that signifies success, which is so true. I feel success comes with self-empowerment, getting up in the morning and looking forward to the day and facing challenges. Being a mum and juggling a house, being a wife and running a biz is a job within itself. So thank you very much. Keep sharing all your thoughts via the website is the easiest way to go. So the book I'm recommending is Creative Visualization by Shakti Gawain. I heard about it through Anya Himmarch. It's to do with visualization. And if you are a slight cynic of visualization, there is a quote from Oprah about the book. I do believe, and I have seen in my own life, that creative visualization works. The quote I want to share with you is by Buddha, and it is, "The mind is everything. What you think, you become." So that leads me into my end thoughts at the end of this podcast. Often as a founder, you're asked, what's your vision, especially if it's to do with fundraising? And visualization, I feel, is extremely powerful. I don't know if it's a subconscious thing or whether it's a conscious thing. I don't know if it's serendipity or whether it's coincidence. But I visualised that I would get to meet William Sitwell. Now, why this was important was that I actually wanted to be a food journalist. Before I set up my chocolate business, it was the thing. And I was seeing a life coach at the time, and this is probably 15 years ago. And she said, get in an elevator and visualise who you're getting in with. You've got 1 minute to convince them to see you. Now, as you're beginning to realise, I'm a woman of words. So 1 minute in an elevator to get my spiel out is tough. Anyway, I visualised this, and then I wrote him a postcard randomly. I wrote him a postcard saying, I've been on MasterChef 2 times, booted off, want to get into food journalism, any chance coming to see you? And the point of this is that he then said, come and see me. And I had a meeting with William Sitwell, who then was the editor of Food Illustrated. And again, when we talked about catalysts with the podcast with Johnny, is that this was a catalyst for me because he said off the cuff, you're the next Juliette Binoche. And I was just thinking, wow, Johnny Depp, bit of chocolate, certainly. And anyway, it just gave me the confidence. So what I'm saying is that trust in visualization. It's not a load of whoopee. Believe in your dreams and just keep them in the back of your head. You never know who you're going to meet and when you're going to meet them. So thank you all so much for finding hope and patience. I'll be back with another story soon, so make sure you subscribe to get the latest episode. And if you like what you hear, feel free to give us a positive rating, subscribe and spread the word. I'd also love to know what you'd like to hear more of, less of, and importantly too, none of. Just let me know again via the website. So until the next time, keep that sparkle. Bye.
Hope and Patience with Amelia Rope. Join the conversation at hopeandpatience.co.uk or find Amelia on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter @Hope and Pat.